Welcome back to another of Dark Castle's remakes with today's film 13 Ghosts, which is a more gory, ludicrously stylized remake of the original of the same name. And when I say ludicrously stylized, I mean that the camera techniques used in this film have been reported as making it physically painful to sit through, which is one hell of a review, and I think a seizure warning goes without saying. So let's begin. The film begins in an old junkyard as a team of ghost hunters show up. First we see the leader, Cyrus Kritikos, and then his personal psychic assistant, Dennis, played by F. Murray Abraham and Matthew Lillard respectively. Lillard isn't really considered anything special in terms of actors, however in this film he actually does a really good job of playing the tormented psychic. It's quite the genuine performance, and although maybe a little over the top sometimes, I just can't hate his character. Even though he does have this constant expression that looks like he's smelling something terrible and is really confused by it. Dennis says that this ghost is a really bad one, and Cyrus knocks pills out of his hand so his abilities are at full potential. He uses his ability and finds the ghost that they're after. Dennis is then overwhelmed by the torments of people who have died, asking Cyrus why are there over 40 dead people present, when the ghost that they're after only killed 9. Cyrus tells him 9 was when he was alive, which illustrates how dangerous this one ghost is. Dennis directs Cyrus to where the ghost is and he brings in his containment cube, which is more of a rectangle, but whatever. And we learn they named this ghost the Breaker, because he used to break his victims into pieces. But for the rest of the film, the Breaker is known as the Juggernaut, and he's known as that for a good reason, so I don't really know why they gave him another name. Although there is a clever bit of foreshadowing later on. Dennis says Cyrus doesn't have the money to pay him for this job, but Cyrus tells him he'll be surprised after tonight, which is when Dennis grabs his shoulder and gets a brief glimpse of whatever it may be that Cyrus is planning. And it's enough for Cyrus to get angry at Dennis, telling him to mind his own business and find the ghost. It's then the ghost activists show up, Kalina and Damon, who are protesting at Cyrus capturing the ghosts, referring to it as slavery and playing God. But we've established that the ghost they're tracking now used to be a mass murderer, and is continuing to kill people after he's dead. So I'd say Cyrus is doing a good thing, and I'm all for capturing the killer ghost. Damon tells Cyrus that he'll never pull it off, and he still needs a 13th ghost. But Dennis is confused because Cyrus only contracted him for 12 ghosts, as he tells Cyrus he's done after tonight. However, there's no time as Cyrus releases the bait for the ghost, which even Dennis agrees is a little ridiculous.
A truck full of blood? You gotta be shitting me.
They power up the containment cube and Cyrus puts on his ghost viewing glasses. The glasses are actually quite an intricate homage to the original film, because in the film the characters wear glasses to see the ghosts. However, the film was also shot in what they call illusiono effects. It involved the ghosts being overlaid onto the screen in a blue colour, and then the audience were given the ghost viewer and ghost remover. The viewer would enhance the ghosts on screen, the remover would obviously remove them completely, mainly for the faint of heart, that one. The ghost viewer gimmick was a major part of the original film, so its inclusion here shows that they at least knew about the original and wanted to give a gentle nod in its direction, which is commendable, because it's not exactly the most successful part of that film. They transmit an incantation to bring out the ghost, hearing it approach with menacing laughter, and we get Evil Dead vision for a bit as the ghost moves around, dropping cars on people and killing others in gruesome ways. Dennis sees him as he drops a car on someone else, and yeah, the ghost is pretty scary looking as he tosses people around, with one of them getting trapped in the cube, and the ghost then beats him to death. But at least he's been captured. The ghosts in the film actually have quite the extensive backstory, which is weird because their backstory is never even mentioned in the film at all. You have to look it up to find out about each of them. It's a real shame because someone put their heart and soul into writing these ghost backstories. But I will try to go into them as much as possible. After the excitement, Dennis finds that Colina's partner is dying and Cyrus is now very dead, with a huge piece of metal in his neck. Somehow. He wasn't even near the action. But he definitely 100% won't return later in some bizarre and improbable way. The film then changes tone and to our main characters, as we see everyone is happy families and playing around in the garden. However, as it progresses, we hear, but not see, the events unfold of a fire breaking out in the house that kills the man's wife, and the surroundings change from an idyllic home to a crappy apartment, as Arthur, our main character, sits alone and depressed. But never mind, let's shift the mood back to quirky family time for a breakfast scene to counteract the depressing backstory. And we're introduced to his son, Bobby, who's obsessed with death, his daughter, Kathy, and their live-in nanny, Maggie. Arthur trips on Bobby's scooter, which leads to Kathy complaining about their place being too small. However, it's the best that Arthur can afford. A big deal is made about Arthur drowning in debt and how he can't afford a better place to live and stuff like that. But if that's the case, why is he paying for a live-in nanny when he has a daughter who's clearly old enough to look after the child? And while they go about their daily routine, a lawyer approaches the door. But despite his occupation, he has some good news for Arthur. He tells them about his uncle, who was Cyrus.
We have an Uncle Cyrus?
Had. I only met him a couple of times as a kid. He wasn't too popular. My dad said he squandered the family fortune.
We have a family fortune?
Well, no, Cyrus squandered it.
That was actually a funny line. Depressing, but still funny. The lawyer, Moss, has a video message for the family playing it, even though the stop button's pressed the entire time. Ooh, it's a ghost video that plays without being played. Ooh! Anyway, Moss hands Arthur a strange-looking key.
A key?
A key to what?
A key to your new house.
That was rather conveniently timed of the video to respond to Arthur. It was a joke before, but is the video a ghost? I can't tell anymore. But yes, Cyrus on the video explains that his former home is Arthur's and his family to use, with him signing off almost ominously.
Perhaps we'll meet again. In another life.
But regardless of how sudden this all is, the family are off to see the house following the lawyer, who's not hiding anything at all, even though this shot would definitely make me think otherwise. They get to the house, and none other than Dennis is there snooping around, pretending to be an electrical engineer, telling Moss that he needs to check the house because it's shutting down the power to the area, but it's just a way for him to get inside. And yes, you saw correctly, the house is nothing but a load of glass windows everywhere, which may look good on paper, but really difficult to navigate. It would make it very hard to see corners and doorways, and that's not even getting into the whole privacy issue. Also, a bit of foreshadowing for you, because Dennis said he was there to check the breakers. Probably a coincidence, but more on that later. Arthur puts the key in the lock, which is an intricate device of spinning wheels and symbols. It honestly should be the first warning sign. Elsewhere in the house, a pendulum starts to swing on a strange device as the house lights up, and the doors open, closing behind them, which unnerves Dennis. The group look around amazed by all the artifacts, and while they do, Dennis is wondering just what Cyrus has done, knowing that things aren't right. Everybody gathers in the main hall, and Dennis asks where the basement is so he can do whatever he's there to do. Moss wants Arthur to sign some papers, and as he goes off, he tells the others to stay right there. So obviously when Arthur leaves, they all run off like schoolchildren skipping class. And one of them is their goddamn nanny. Seriously, what is she being paid for if she's gonna act just like the kids do? And also, I say kids, but honestly, Shannon Elizabeth's character ain't no kid in this film. Ugh. That sounded really creepy, didn't it? Sorry. And when Dennis investigates, he gets extremely powerful flashes of ghosts, which fills him with dread when he sees that there are containment cubes in the basement. Back in the library, Moss is persuading Arthur to sign the papers, but Arthur says that he has no way of paying for the house at all. Moss says that he never has to worry about money again, which, to counteract that good news, in the basement, Dennis puts on a pair of the ghost specs and he finally understands what's going on, as he sees all the ghosts in their cells, as they shout and taunt him, causing him to run like hell out of there. Dennis goes to Arthur and tells him who he really is, saying he used to hunt ghosts with Cyrus. Well, he actually beats around the bush a little, but then explains in plain English.
Goats?
Ghost! Ghost, goddammit, listen to me!
Yeah, I'm with Shaggy on this one. That was a stupid thing to say, Arthur. Dennis continues to tell Arthur that he needs to get his family the hell out of the house. Meanwhile, the others have found their own rooms. Bobby's found a room full of toys, and Kathy's enjoying a particularly feminine room. Dennis warns Arthur to get out again, but before going to leave himself, he gets another ghostly flash, which causes Arthur to help him. However, when Dennis is touched by Arthur, he gets flashes of everything that's happened to both Arthur and his wife, practically giving the guy a seizure in the process. After Dennis has recovered, it's then they notice that Moss has disappeared. He's gone into the basement, and while wearing some ghost glasses, Moss starts to make fun of the deadly ghosts.
What are you staring at? Hey, kiddo. Thinks I'm gonna duck. Hey, nice tits. Oh! Jeez, you. What's the matter, honey? Bad representation?
You know, I think he's going to regret saying that. But also, those comments are a way for the film to tell us, yeah, this guy's a creep and it's okay if he dies. Which, as he seems to be stealing a shed load of cash, it's understandable. However, taking the case has activated the machine we saw before, and a huge device of cogs we barely see starts moving, which Moss doesn't pay attention to at all. But come to think of it, you can't really blame him because the CGI is added in later for him. And with the machine started up, the house then starts to lock down. Dennis and Arthur can tell something bad is happening, despite not knowing the house is locked, as a lever activates on the machine and the first ghost is released. And it's the sensor bar ghost, as she stalks Moss down the corridor a bit until he gets caught in a door, slicing him in two. Which, at the very least, makes more fucking sense than a wire slicing him in half. Also, a little backstory for you, because the movie won't tell you. The naked ghost is called the Angry Princess, for reasons that will become clear later. As she was unable to appreciate her own beauty, she kept having plastic surgery, until when she tried to perform surgery on herself, it left her blind in one eye. And she died via suicide, slashing herself with the butcher's knife her ghost carries. So at least we can appreciate the effort that went into writing the ghost backstories, even if the filmmakers don't. And surprise, surprise, when Arthur and Dennis try to get the family to leave, they find they're missing and they split up to look for them. One missing member, Kathy, has found a bathroom that she's enjoying, and as we zoom into the ghost glasses, we see that the Angry Princess has taken up residence there, with the room covered in blood, the bathtub filled with it, and the words "I'm sorry" written on the floor. And this is interesting, because in my last review, Ghost Ship, I complained about how these scares were there to affect the audience and not the characters. I said how pointless that was, and basically had the lasting equivalent of someone going boo at you. But here, the film gets around that. Because with the camera going into the glasses, it firstly explains why only we can see it, but it also adds this clever piece of tension. You know, it's saying if she only wore the glasses, she'd know of the danger. It's like that old Hitchcock quote. You show two people in a restaurant talking, and then a bomb goes off. You have a boring scene, and then a sudden surprise. But if you show the audience the bomb first, you then have a scene that's incredibly tense. And that's exactly what the film did here. While Kathy enjoys the bath, the Angry Princess turns the water into blood, and the ghost attacks when Kathy goes to splash it on her face. However, Arthur enters in the nick of time to get Kathy out of there. He asks where Bobby is, and Kathy assumes he's with the nanny, but then she says she lost track of him, as we see him scoot around the house. Bobby goes past the basement and he hears a woman's voice telling him to come down, but also a different woman telling him not to go down into the basement, which he ignores that one and continues down anyway. And back with Arthur, he's discovered that the house is now locked up and tries to break free, but is told by Dennis he's wasting his time. Arthur wants Dennis to help him find his son, but he's pretty unwilling, which just results in Arthur telling him to get off his ass as they all go to find Bobby.
Did the lawyers split?
That's your yellow card warning, movie. One more like that and you're out of here. Bobby is wandering around the creepy basement as the levers continue to activate on the machine, letting out more ghosts. But despite wearing the ghost glasses, Bobby doesn't see any of them yet. Back with the rest of the group, they're shouting for Bobby, but Dennis tells them that it's useless because of the ecto-bar glass, which means it's shatterproof and soundproof. Maggie asks about the writing, and he says they're containment spells, designed to keep ghosts from leaving, with Dennis also saying that ghosts have to obey whatever the spells say. And in the basement, Bobby sees his first ghost, this twitching monstrosity. That would be the Bound Woman, a serial cheating high schooler who had her neck broken by a jilted lover. The backstory isn't as deep on this one, mainly because that's pretty much the last we see of her. Everyone else is still searching, and Maggie mentions something weird about the floor, and when Dennis takes a look through the glasses, he sees there's more hidden spells on the floor, meaning Cyrus was either being overly protective or there's something else going on. Dennis is quick to ask Arthur where he's going when he heads towards the basement, warning Arthur again of the evil ghosts. But Arthur points out that Dennis said they were all locked up, and says he'll pay Dennis whatever Cyrus owes him, which convinces him it's okay to go down there, at least pensively. Back with Bobby, he's still hearing a ghost voice telling him to leave the basement, and that's when he sees the ghost of his mother. However, as he backs into a corner, he sees Cyrus of all people, and is then mysteriously taken by something. The rest of the group are still searching, and Arthur gives the stupid suggestion that they should split up, which naturally Shaggy is completely against, but they all do it anyway. Dennis explains the ghosts to Maggie because she says she can't see any, and Dennis sees that some of the cells are open, but not all of them.
God! I hate it when they do that! What? They wait for you to stick your face right up against the glass, and then they give you a big fat boom.
That's another funny line, and it does make fun of the fact that, yeah, ghosts in movies do like to jump out at you like that. Maggie uses the glasses and sees the ghost for herself, which pleases Dennis that someone now believes him. He explains that most ghosts are completely docile and don't want to hurt us, but the ones in the house are exceptions because their deaths were so violent, so violence is all they know. The ghost then gives Dennis another boo when the glasses are returned to him, so he responds with the finger. However, then he has a vision of his own death by the Juggernaut, or the Breaker, which is what Dennis said he was there to check in the first place. You see? Now either that's some pretty clever foreshadowing, or I'm just looking way too much into the film. But I like to think it was deliberately written, mainly because then I can claim to be smart. Arthur and Kathy have found what Bobby left in the basement, first his ghost glasses and then the voice recorder he uses. When Arthur plays the tape, he hears Bobby screaming, which doesn't look good for him. And then Dennis finds one of the cells open, saying the symbol on the door is for the Jackal, referring to him as the Charlie Manson of ghosts. If he's out, they're in big trouble. Which we see when Kathy puts on the ghost glasses and the Jackal is right in her face as it grabs her and pins her against the wall, clawing at her, as Arthur tries to pull Kathy away. The Jackal is definitely the most iconic and visually interesting ghost of the movie, with quite the backstory. Born of a prostitute, he became a serial killer attacking women and prostitutes. Although strangely, he committed himself into an asylum to get help, but went insane as a result, scratching at the walls of his padded cell, which is where the scratching comes from. Eventually, he broke through his straitjacket, which caused the doctors to place his head in a cage and leave him in a padded room, which, when the asylum burned down, it was also where he died, so his ghost is now afraid of fire. Which we see when Kalina shows up suddenly and throws a flare into the Jackal's face, causing him to disappear immediately, as they drag Kathy to safety, with the Jackal continuing to take chase until he's stopped by a protected door. And with Dennis and Maggie, they encounter the angry princess, as Dennis desperately tells Maggie to get out of the way. But the next time we see them, they're just trying to get out of the basement, so I guess we're just meant to assume they got out of the situation unscathed. Arthur can't understand how Kalina got in, but she says her entrance is now closed. She then tells Kathy to give Arthur the glasses, and he's finally convinced of the ghost, seeing the Jackal. Kalina then shares information about the machine at the centre of the house, that it was designed by the devil and powered by ghosts, and if it works, can predict the future. Somehow. I mean, it's not like there's a big screen TV hooked up to it. It's just a load of cogs. So how it does what it does is completely unknown to me. Arthur really doesn't care about what she's saying, keen on getting his family out. But when he tries to talk to Kathy, they find that she has now disappeared. And at the same time, Dennis and Maggie are running through the basement when a wall starts closing up. Dennis throws his ghost glasses to Maggie, which is not good when he starts getting attacked by another ghost, the Torn Prince. The Torn Prince was an up-and-coming baseball player who died in a drag race after, ironically, being dragged under the car he was driving. The accident was also caused by a cut brake line. He's actually one of the more aggressive of the ghosts, which is odd because his backstory isn't particularly violent. But anyway, Dennis is unable to see the ghost and is directed by Maggie, avoiding getting a bat in the face, which seems to work quite well as Dennis gets through a newly opened door to escape. Which really shouldn't have worked, because Dennis himself said that the glass was soundproof. Back with Arthur and Kalina, they start to encounter more ghosts and are forced to once again run from the jackal. Kalina looks in her book and finds that they'll be protected in the library, which is directly above them. But fortunately, Dennis and Maggie have made it out.
Can I rely on you not to get me killed?
I guarantee nothing.
That was another funny line from Dennis. However, how did he meet back up with Maggie? If it was that easy, then why was it such a big deal that they got cut off? Seems like they just wasted time on some false tension, really, when there are plenty of other ways to legitimately raise the tension. Kalina manages to get out with Dennis and Maggie running straight into her, and of course, Dennis isn't pleased to see her. And in the basement, where Arthur still is, the machine activates another lever, letting loose the hammer. Who's a ghost with, appropriately enough, a sledgehammer for a hand, and he was wrongfully accused of stealing. Then a gang, led by his accuser, hung his wife and children, burning their bodies. However, in revenge, he beat them all to death, but was then punished by being chained to a train and having railroad spikes driven into his body with his own sledgehammer. Which actually makes him a tragic figure, because as a man, he didn't actually kill anyone who didn't kind of deserve it. Fortunately, everyone manages to get Arthur out of the basement just in time, and they all quickly make their way to the library. But before they can get there, the jackal appears again to claw at Arthur's back for a bit, until another flare is thrown into his face. I think everyone should have had a flare if they're that effective. They get to the library with Dennis and Kalina bickering.
You got something to say it.
All right, let's start with this. This is all your goddamn fault! If you hadn't caught them, we wouldn't be running from them now, would we?
It's his uncle that built the damn house!
Yeah, but you helped him.
Do I need to mention again that these are crazy killer ghosts, and if they weren't after you, they'd be killing someone else, so shut the fuck up, you Greenpeace wannabe bitch! I'm sorry, but the rightful indignation with this woman is so thick you could bottle it. And firstly, it's completely misplaced because, as I said, evil ghosts that should be locked up. And secondly, her personality won't even make sense later, so I really can't stand her. But yes, she is correct about one ghost that's not the kind that likes to tear people to shreds. The fourth ghost, Arthur's wife. Dennis tells Kalina not to tell him, but she does regardless, which results in Dennis getting a punch to the face. However, Kalina then proposes an idea to save everyone dead and alive. And Kalina tells them all about the Black Zodiac, an evil inversion of the regular Zodiac, which all the ghosts represent, as she goes through every one of the ghosts, even though the picture for the Angry Princess is actually for the bound woman. But even weirder is that the Juggernaut is listed as the Titan in the book. So now he's got 3 different names? Also, Juggernaut and Titan are very different things. A Juggernaut is an unstoppable force, whereas a Titan is a god in the Greek pantheon. So which is it? It does kinda matter. Apparently not, as Kalina explains that the ghosts power up the machine, whose purpose is to open the Ocularis Infernum, as she calls it, the Eye of Hell, because hell can't be subtle, I guess. Dennis mentions the 13th ghost, but Kalina says that the 13th is a failsafe. In order to stop the machine, it needs a sacrifice of a living person to shut it down. And of course, Arthur is the 13th ghost, and he needs to jump into the eye and kill himself, which is a pretty dumb plan. Kalina suggests using explosive to destroy the machine instead, but Dennis wants to find another way, and rather out of character, suggests going outside one last time to find the others. Arthur agrees, except this time they're taking a shield of the protective glass with them, which is actually a really smart idea. So everyone has their sort of jobs to do. Arthur and Dennis are looking for the kids, while Maggie and Kalina are going to the machine to find a way to stop it. Whilst investigating the machine, Maggie finds Cyrus approaching her, and the ghost-repelling flare doesn't work. When Kalina knocks Maggie out, we find out why. Yes, she has been working with Cyrus this whole time, and also he didn't die at the start of the film, which is why I was so pissed at Kalina's annoying personality. But also, what would have happened if everyone had just agreed to blow up the building? Their plan would be kinda fucked, basically. And how did Cyrus manage to hide in a glass frickin' house for all this time as well? And Kalina is a simpering submissive in a blatant abusive relationship, as Cyrus berates and shouts at her, so gone is the previously strong and confident character to just a complete nervous wreck. Back with Arthur and Dennis, the Hammer shows up, and instead of running with their shield, Dennis decides to sacrifice himself instead, trapping Arthur behind the glass as the Hammer starts pummeling Dennis. And of course, the Juggernaut is released at the same time, as we basically see Dennis's vision again, with the Juggernaut literally breaking him in two. I didn't think I'd be saddened by the death of a Matthew Lillard character, but honestly, he was one of the best characters in the film. He was knowledgeable, but also self-aware, but not too self-aware to be obnoxious. And of course, the majority of funny lines came from him too. A really good character in my opinion. Kalina tells Cyrus she made sure Arthur believe his sacrifice will stop the machine, but really it's his 13th ghost that will activate it, and Cyrus tells her to put his kids in jeopardy to make sure he'll kill himself, which she's hesitant about, but again, she's the submissive now, so she does whatever Cyrus tells her. And back with Arthur, fortunately for him, Cyrus has activated the last part of the machine, which causes all the ghosts to disappear, but he does get a short reunion with his wife, but she disappears as well. Also, nice touch that his wife is the 4th ghost, and she's also holding an IV, the Roman numeral for 4. I just thought that was an interesting aspect to add in. And of course, once Kalina has done everything that Cyrus needed her for, he subsequently kills her by crushing her in a wall, with shoddy effects, and pretty much cementing her role as the completely useless character. Back with Arthur, he notices his kids have been placed in the middle of the machine, and looking through the glasses, he sees that all the ghosts are standing around it, powering it up. And Cyrus is there as well, almost compelling Arthur to save his family. But Arthur remembers there are 12 ghosts and counts them, and when he takes his glasses off, he realizes that Cyrus isn't a ghost. So Arthur, knowing he's been deceived, immediately starts fighting with him. Cyrus beats him down, berating him, telling him he's little and insignificant. However, fortunately for Arthur, Maggie has woken up and is fucking with the machine, turning off the incantation that keeps the ghosts in place. And in a good amount of catharsis, the ghosts pick up Cyrus and throw him in the machine, killing him pretty much instantly. As the machine starts blowing the place up, Dennis appears as a ghost now to tell Arthur that he should be with his kids. He jumps into the centre just as the entire house is destroyed, but the machine protected them from the destruction. And the film ends with the ghosts being set free so they can maim, mutilate and kill some more. So that's a fantastic result. But at least the family gets to see their mother one last time. And of course, they have to end on a joke.
I'm sorry, family, Kathy, Bobby, Uncle, Ghost. I am sick of this nanny shit. I've had it. This was not in the job description. I quit!
That's your red card, movie. You're out of here! But also, how the hell did Maggie manage to survive being right next to the machine when it blew up? Because it was established that the centre of the house was the only place that they would be safe. That's just stupid. But there you go. That was 13 Ghosts. I said the same thing in the review for House on Haunted Hill, but the overall backstory for this film is really superb, and it's still so disappointing that the writers spent so much time on going into the stories of each ghost, and it's never even mentioned. I mean, it's something great to look up for yourself and do research on, but it does kind of prove that this film was originally written differently and then adapted into this movie, which isn't a terrible film, but the plot is nowhere near as good as it could have been. But for what it's worth, I still think it's the best of the 3 Dark Castle movies we've looked at so far. Also, what's with Dark Castle and movies about people being locked in a house with ghosts? They seem to enjoy that. So we've looked at the first 3 Dark Castle movies. However, I couldn't just leave it there, because the first movie we looked at, House on Haunted Hill, had a sequel, made a mere 8 years after the original. And we can only hope that they took that time to write a decent story. No. Anyway, more on that next video. See you next time.
Let's go.
check it. I walk through the streets trying to figure out why I captivate people when I don't even trust. Like all the things that